Good afternoon, everyone. The subcommittee will come to order. The purpose of today's hearing is to receive testimony on 15 bills pending before the Public Lands, Forests, and Mining Subcommittee. Because of the large number of bills on today's agenda, I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but the complete agenda will, of course, be included in the record. I want to note at the outset we've got a former member of our committee here, former Senator Mary Landrieu from Louisiana, a longtime member of the Senate and of this committee is with us in the back. And we've got members who will be joining us shortly who have another committee assignment at the moment. We have others who will be joining us telephonically. I also want to begin by recognizing the staggering loss of life that has occurred and embedded within what has shaped up to be a really horrific wildfire season. More than 36 people have perished in infernos raging throughout the western United States this year. Dozens more are missing. In Oregon, my colleague Senator Wyden's home state, thousands have lost their homes and over 500,000 people were evacuated last week alone. In my home state of Utah and elsewhere in the West, we've got wind-driven fires that continue to spread across our federal, state, tribal, and public lands. With all these wildfires raging throughout the West, I was thrilled to see that we would be receiving testimony on legislation to address the management of our federal forests. I strongly believe that the mega fires we're watching on TV could have, in many instances, been prevented if only active management practices had been implemented. As many of you are probably aware, forests have been shaped and have been influenced by fire for certainly as long as our species has been around, and even longer. Cycles of burning and regrowth are completely natural. They aren't a new feature of current climate conditions, as some would have us believe. These fires weren't unpredictable. They were predictable, and in fact, they were predicted. We could have prepared for them. But the management of our forests has regrettably become hamstrung, partly by regulations promulgated by bureaucrats, often operating many thousands of miles away from the lands that they're in charge of administering. For example, regulations under the Clean Air Act perversely and most likely unintentionally work to discourage the practice of letting fires burn, especially in those areas that have air pollution levels that exceed permissible standards. In these instances, they may favor reactive short-term fire suppression at the expense of heightened long-term risks. When Congress imagined activities like prescribed burns or removal of snag trees, Congress did not foresee a regulatory Byzantine labyrinth that led to litigation at every turn. Litigation that in many instances would end up forestalling the taking of precautionary measures and ultimately could lead to fires that could in turn lead to the loss of life and environmental catastrophe. Management of our forests has moved away from proactive measures, largely out of fear, quite legitimate and well-founded fear of being sued. This in turn has led to bigger fires, threatening greater numbers of lives, livelihoods, and homes. In many cases, it has also resulted in additional and worse air pollution than would have otherwise been the case had prescribed burns been allowed to occur or forest overgrowth been eliminated. Research tells us that between 4.4 million and 11.8 million acres burned each year in prehistoric California. Between 1982 and 1998, California's agency land managers burned on average about 30,000 acres a year. Between 1999 and 2017, that number dropped to an annual 13,000 acres. That is a tremendous gap between the natural cycle and what our forest management efforts have provided. Now, I'm grateful that we have skilled emergency personnel who help prevent tragedy from forest fire. These brave women and men put their lives on the line during the course of their work and do so on a regular basis and quite heroically. They're a necessary part of our forest management strategy. We can do more to ease the burden that they face with targeted controlled burns and with removal of excess fuel that builds up within our forests. With these burns, people can plan ahead, get out of town, install a HEPA filter in their house, make a rational plan to meet their needs. Furthermore, the fire suppression and military style of firefighting can be more environmentally destructive in some cases than controlled burns or in some rare instances than the wildfire itself. Suppression tactics often include cutting down large snags, bulldozing miles of ridge tops, and lighting high-severity fires to control the fire behavior. I believe that a large portion of this could be prevented if local agencies and federal partners could sidestep illogical regulatory barriers and address the obvious problems that lead to catastrophe. I hope that today we can make real progress in addressing the needs of communities put at risk by poor management practices. Additionally, on the hearing agenda today are a number of bills relating to the proper management of our public lands, including the Miracle Mountain Designation Act, which I've introduced in the Senate. This bill memorializes the events surrounding the Bald Mountain Fire of 2018, a fast-moving wildfire, not unlike the explosive infernos we've seen in Oregon and California of late. And this fire, the Bald Mountain Fire of 2018, is one that nearly incinerated the community of Elk Ridge City in Utah. Defying all logic, the advancing fire unexpectedly stopped along an unnamed mountain barely 2 miles from homes and from evacuation routes. The mountain quickly earned the nickname Miracle Mountain by Utahns. Elk Ridge City was blessed, but elsewhere around the country, year after year, families are forced to evacuate their homes due to wildfire. As previously mentioned, better forest management can reduce the severity of wildfires and reduce the risk to fire-prone communities. We need a range of management tools to cut the red tape and curb frivolous litigation that has stalled fuel reduction projects and efforts to remove dead and dying trees from poorly managed federal. It's timely today that we'll hear testimony on the Emergency Wildlife and Public Safety Act, a bill sponsored by Senator Feinstein and Senator Daines that proposes to accelerate wildfire prevention projects across the Cottonwood State. Senator Feinstein has joined us to provide a few brief remarks about her bill. Senator Udall and Senator Whitehouse will also be providing statements about their respective bills on today's agenda. And Chairman Murkowski will also join us to speak about her Alaska Native Claims Settlement amendments to expand services and resources for elderly Alaska tribal members. I look forward to hearing more about each of these bills and the other bills on today's agenda. With that, I'd like to turn to Senator Wyden, who's the ranking member on this committee, for his remarks. Senator Wyden.